Hey there, everybody. Good morning. My name is Charlie Sextro. I am one of the senior programmers from the festival. I'd like to welcome you out to this Cinema Café conversation between Ashton Sanders and KiKi Layne. This is actually the first time that anyone from Sundance has asked me to introduce one of these, so I was actually surprised when the email came. I don't know if that's something against me, but then when I saw who was on this panel, it made sense because over the course of the programming time and all the conversations between the team, I was so obsessed with these two actors and the performances in this film. I obviously, maybe even obnoxiously to the rest of the team, that it was so clear. I just kept bringing up how kind of revelatory I thought these performances were. And while they have done incredible work in the past, this was really the film that solidified that these are two performers I am going to be seeing on the big screen for a long, long, long time. So I want to thank KiKi and Ashton for taking part and congratulate them for their incredible work on this film. And then I'll mention too, we have many, many awesome conversations happening here for the next week straight. So I encourage you to check out the schedule. You could check the app. So tomorrow, if you were to stop by, you would see a conversation between Boots Riley and Chiwetel Ejiofor. If you come back Monday, you could see a conversation between Jenny Slate and Ed Helms. There's tons of great stuff all festival long, so please check out the schedule. And so this series is a partnership that we have between New York Times, Times Talks, and we partnered with them for a number of these conversations throughout this first weekend. So we love working with them, love their support, and we love how they take these conversations off the mountain and bring them out to the rest of the world. Very thankful for Kyle Buchanan from the New York Times who will be moderating, and I am going to welcome up, to say a few words, the creative director of Times Talks, Michelle Gray.
Thank you. Thank you so much. As Charlie mentioned, this is, I don't know if you mentioned how long we've been doing this for, but our 8th consecutive year of Times Talks from the New York Times partnering with Sundance at Cinema Café. Also mentioning that we have some great talks coming up with Boots Riley and Chiwetel and Jenny Slate and Ed Helms on Monday. Those are also Times Talks. For those of you who are not familiar with what Times Talks are, they are the New York Times live conversation series that pairs New York Times journalists with the brightest and boldest creative minds from the fields of film, art, literature, science, fashion, and music. So it's my distinct pleasure to introduce Kyle Buchanan, who is our cultural reporter and carpetbag columnist for the New York Times, and he is going to do a more extensive introduction of KiKi and Ashton. So have a great time.
Hey everybody, thanks for coming. Final introduction. Let's not waste any time. They're two of Hollywood's most exciting actors. You may know him from Moonlight. You may know her from If Beale Street Could Talk. And now they're starring together in Native Son, which if you haven't caught it, is a must-see. It confirms their immense talent. Let's bring them to the stage, Ashton Sanders and KiKi Layne. So before we get started talking about Native Son, I'm curious, what was your path to becoming an actor and what did that satisfy in you?
For me, I've just always known I wanted to do it since I was a little girl. So I was, I think, 7 years old when I told my mom, and her response was she got me an audition at the local performing arts school in Cincinnati, where I grew up. So I started studying acting in a school setting when I was 7. And just never stopped.
But do you have a different relationship to it now that you're older?
No, I just love it. I really can't imagine myself doing anything else. And I've just been really committed to it for a long time, like went to college for it and everything. And thankfully, you know, it's working out okay.
Ashton, what about you?
Yeah, same. I kind of been acting since the young age of like 7, 8, 9. I was kind of like a loner growing up, so I kind of spent a lot of like introspective time, and I was a creative, you know, I just loved to perform. Ended up enrolling into this performing arts program called Amazing Grace Conservatory, and there is where I kind of nurtured my art, you know, and you know, like my craft developed. And like KiKi went to school year-round, like since 7, 8, 9, doing this. And KiKi and I actually went to the same acting school in DePaul University in Chicago for acting. And now we're here, man, doing films together, so it's cool.
Did it sort of bring you out of your shell if you were an introspective kid to be on stage or in front of people?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I find that acting is kind of like a release for me. So every character I do, I kind of like shed myself and almost like put them on, you know? So it's kind of like losing myself for a minute in order to like explore this different like reality or life. That's how I've always kind of, I don't know, like, you know.
Is that hard to come back from? I'm so curious. When you guys give your all on screen and you've been in this environment, nurtured by your director, plunging into these characters who often go through some really harrowing experiences, then it's a wrap. You go home. Are you just able to shrug that off?
No, not really. Yeah, it's like you go home every day after work, and you might have your things, to kind of get you back into like your life and your experiences. Maybe if it's a playlist or something to kind of like help you to leave what was work, back at work. But I do think sometimes, like when you've been in it for a long time, like some things will just stick.
They linger.
Yeah, some things linger a little longer.
Like a residue.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, residue. But that's something that I kind of have like found to be happening since like, like we would be doing theater year round and like hopping in and out of different shows. And I think like we've been trained since a young age to, I guess, be able to do this type of work and like not let it like affect us like too like deep or personal.
But how does it affect you when you see it? Because I know Rashid Johnson, who directed the film, before the premiere, he said one of the things he was most excited about is that you guys hadn't seen it before the premiere. So to sit there in that giant Eccles Theater and watch this, what was that emotional experience like?
I'm still trying to wrap my head around it.
Same.
It's always like so weird to watch yourself on screen, but yeah, I think we created something beautiful. Definitely, and something important. So in that regards, I think like it's lit, like it's cool. Like,
yeah, like I'm still processing it too, because there's so many emotions when you're watching it for the first time, and then of course there's also that part of you first time you're always kind of like looking like, that's what I did?
Yeah.
Or that's how that shot turned out? So I always feel like it's better like the second time around, because then you can kind of throw all that stuff to the side and just enjoy all of this work, that all of these people put into making this film come together and be complete. But yeah, first time around, you're like, oh, they cut that scene and blah, blah, blah.
right,
Like.
it's so weird.
When did the two of you first read the book? Was it when you became involved with this or growing up or?
First time I read it was in high school. Yeah, I can't remember what grade exactly, but that was the first time I read it.
And what kind of effect did it have on you? What do you remember the takeaway being?
I just remember, it's one thing to read it like high school and then reading it again as an adult, but I just think that the first time around, I'm like, wow, like how did this just go so quickly, the completely just wrong way? And I don't think at that time I could really, put words to that or really understand that fully. And then reading it again in preparation for filming, I feel like I could understand like what Bigger had went through on a deeper level, just based off of newer experiences that I had.
Ashton, when did you first read it?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I read the book after we filmed, and that's because, not to say that I wasn't familiar with the story. Obviously, I'm familiar with Richard Wright and Native Son and who Bigger is and how iconic the book is and the character and what he represents. But I read the script first, and like everything that I knew about the story was still in the script, and I knew that this was modern day, and I didn't want to like put on anything from the book. I wanted to have a human experience with Bigger, like just not put anything on him that I've put on him, kind of like develop him myself. And so, yeah, I mean, still after reading it, you know, it's still some of the same nuances, you know, and it's kind of I don't know if it's incredible or just like, you know, that like we're kind of like dealing with the same like racially like social issues in like 2019 in like a different way, but like he wrote this book in like 1934, you know, so yeah, it's interesting.
Have you happened to see, there's a 1950s version, a film version, where Richard Wright plays Bigger himself,
Bigger.
even though I think he's in his 40s?
He's in his 40s, yeah.
Yeah.
I saw a little like YouTube clip of that, like developing the character, but I never like really like intuited too deep. It was like, oh, that's cool, that's Richard Wright playing Bigger, like, oh. And he's 40, yeah.
Well, let's talk about developing that character, because if I remember correctly, Rashid met with you, I think before there was even a completed script.
Yeah, Rashid and I met a year prior to actually, I think he met with you a year prior as well.
I met with him a few months before.
Okay. Well, yeah, I met with Rashid. Okay, word. I met with Rashid a year prior, and yeah, immediately his vision, you know, like Susan Lori Parks was involved, and like I'm a fan of her work. You know, we come from the theater, so you know we've spent time like reading her work and whatever, and just everything, all of his vision that he had for the character. It's like, yeah, cool. This sounds cool. I'm on board. I wanted to collaborate with him, you know, and so yeah, and then Matthew Libatique came on board, and I'm an admirer of him, and then KiKi and, you know, like Nick and Sanaa and A24 and now HBO. Yeah, so everything kind of felt right. You know, it felt like I needed to do this character for myself.
Did the two of you know each other before you started this film?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we went to school together.
At the exact same time?
Yeah, we were there at the same time.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
So what was your first impression of Ashton at school?
First impression of Ashton at school, he just had this. He just has his own like really like cool vibe. You're like walking through the halls of DePaul, but you just look like you were just so, I don't know, beyond all like
Oh my
DePaul BS.
God, that's so funny.
Why? Like for real, just like strolling through the halls.
Wow. I thought she was a goddess, like everybody. No, seriously, I was a freshman and she was like a senior, like a junior.
Junior, third year, yeah.
Yeah, so, and I don't know, everybody was like, KiKi, damn, she's a goddess, you need to see her work, da-da-da. So immediately I'm like, damn, she's a goddess, like, cool, man. And we kind of hung out with the same, like, friend group, but, you know, did our own thing, but still, you know, have as much respect as her now as I did then, like, still very much the same. Cool girl.
So when KiKi got cast in If Beale Street Could Talk, did you text Barry Jenkins immediately like, yes, you have made the correct
Actually,
choice?
I'm gonna let her talk about this because she was texting me during the auditions.
Yes, like before my chemistry read, I texted him like, "Yo, I'm about to have my audition with Barry. Like, you got any tips?" And you told me just be prepared. You said come ready to work,
Be prepared.
do the work, and like that's what you got to have going into the room. And I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool, I got that." And then I'm like, "Do that." And then I walked in there prepared and came out
Got that
Tish.
part.
Well, let's talk about Native Son and about, because it sounds like you guys were meeting early, talking to Rashid early. There's a lot that goes into these characters. Their look, their physicality, what they're going through. How involved were you in sort of collaborating to come up with these complexities?
For me, it was cool. Like Rashid kind of gave me creative like freedom with Bigger. So like his style of dress, I was able to incorporate like some of the way he's this Afro punk, you know, and I'm not too far from that community, which is another reason why I felt like I needed to do this film, because it's like another set of being like an other, you know, like you already feel a certain type of way being a black man in the world. Now you're this Afro punk, so you're like othering yourself, but that's just you. I thought that it was brilliant, and so I wanted to make it as real as possible. So luckily, with costumes, I was able to collaborate with the really dope costume designer, Beth, who owns this like really dope shop in LA called Union LA. She's like just really sick. And with that, you just everything, you know, like Rashid gave us freedom to play in the character and trusted us. And so, like, yeah, collectively, like, we created these beings, you know, these beings, these human beings, you know, these real people. Yeah.
Can you talk about that? Because she's a somewhat different character, I think, and treated somewhat differently than she is in the book.
Yeah. I mean, it was all the way around just really collaborative, you know, with Rashid, Betty, Cory, the hairstylist. Like, it was a lot of conversations. There definitely was a vision, especially, you know, coming in, making the story more modern. So what does that look like? But definitely it was those conversations really helped to, you know, bring, I don't know, create the character fully and then get a better understanding of the type of story we were trying to tell. Like, oh, what am I saying when my hair is like this or when I'm wearing this costume instead of that one? So it was really nice just to be able to have those conversations and feel like our voices were being heard, because it's like, well, I have to wear this and it has to go on my head and, you know, all of that.
That's what I thought was so interesting about your character, and honestly, yours too, Ashton. You know, your character works in a salon, so she has a different look a lot of the time that we see her. And your character, Bigger, is presenting an image of himself almost before anyone else can jump to a conclusion of who he must be. He wears what he wears almost like armor. You know, it enters the room and then he enters the room. But I wonder, you two, I mean, you have, you know, a great relationship to style, it seems like. How important is that to you, the ability to express yourself, use self-expression through fashion?
I mean, I love it. It's fun because, I mean, you're always telling a story. I mean, even your mood or like what you're trying to communicate during the day, like, is going to affect what you're going to put on. Or even if you like are feeling, you know, some type of way and you want to change that, like your clothes and like whatever you decide to put on can completely shift like how you're just feeling going out into the world. So it was cool to, you know, be playing Bessie, who I feel like her style is more in alignment with mine than Tish. Because Tish was just like, girl, you got these 3 looks, you got like 2 hairstyles, and that's it. So it was nice to, you know, play someone a little bit more closely to how I tend to, you know, make fashion choices.
Yeah, like, same thing. I mean, like, we're artists first, right? So I've always felt like the way I dress has always been like an extension of myself. Like, everything that I do is an extension of myself. So it was cool. Like, Bigger was also, I felt like a part of me in terms of like my style of dress, you know. But also we like think similar in that way, you know. And so yeah, I mean, our fashion is extension of our artistic selves. That's how I feel about it, at least.
So when you dye your hair green and you wear that jacket, I feel like that must do a lot of the work of putting you in that place where you can do the acting.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely.
So what was this experience like? I mean, Rashid has never directed a film before, but this material is so strong and he's got such a great point of view as an artist. Tell me what it was like on this set.
You know, surprisingly, Rashid just really knew what he was doing. You know, it was all around like a really smooth, solid, like 6 weeks of filming. They were strategic with what they wanted and knew what they wanted so much to where, again, they allowed us to play. And so, yeah, I mean, we knew what we were there to create. You know, there were days that were super heavy, obviously, days that were super light, but we all had the same mindset. And so, you know, things were smooth.
Talk to me about the physicality of the character, because I think what's so interesting is when we first meet Bigger, he's got this kind of almost an unpredictability in his movement, you know? Like he can breeze through a bar almost on this sort of curvy line, but then when he gets the job working for the family as a driver, there's a little bit more stiffness to him. And there has to be. There's this structure that's sort of co-opting him.
Yeah, there has to be. I mean, this film is about like racial identity almost, right? So like some black men, get uncomfortable when they're around, like Caucasians. I mean, that's nothing that's unheard of. There's like uncomfortability and like whatever it is, and so yeah, again, like making bigger as real as possible. That's something that black men go through. Like, say if I was to stand on an elevator with with the 5 to 6, like white people, for example. I don't know why. Like I'm going to, or somebody else is going to feel uncomfortable. I don't know why it's made up like that. Because nobody's doing anything. That's just the way, like, socially it is, And so, like, those are real moments, like, real moments with bigger. I mean, and I do think also there's big and there's bigger, like there's like a shift between him in the film. And that's something that he's always dealing with early on, like his inner monologue is bigger and he becomes bigger the second half after the murder scene. That's something that I like cautiously was aware of while filming. So I hope I answer your question. That was like a lot.
No, it's fine. KiKi, it's interesting to sort of watch this because I feel like it's in conversation with If Beale Street Could Talk, but they're very different approaches. If Beale Street Could Talk is very period, and yet it's impossible to watch that and not feel how relevant it still is. Whereas Native Son is updating that material. As somebody who read that book, as somebody who's been in If Beale Street Could Talk, what does that show you, teach, illustrate about how systemic this is and how hard it is for that to change?
I mean, it shows us how much just hasn't changed. Native Son was written in the 1930s. If Beale Street Could Talk was written in the early 1970s. And the same conversations, the same issues that are being explored in both of these novels, we are still having those same conversations, having those same exact issues today. And so it was interesting doing If Beale Street Could Talk, which we allowed to, remain based in the time that it was written, and then doing Native Son, where we modernized it. I thought that was interesting because both still, found the power in that, the power of seeing like, oh, like for Beale Street, this is the early 1970s, but if we just change the costumes and change a couple of the set pieces, well, this is easily a modern story. Nothing really has to change. And then modernizing Native Son, you see like how you can still feel that history in it though, like the history of like, what got these characters into this place, or the history that has kind of put them here, which is interesting. The first, act is called fate, like those things that kind of just happened that are out of your control, that have put you where you are, and that struggle of trying to fight against that, and what that does to you, emotionally, psychologically, even how that affects us physically. But I definitely think it's been very, it's meant, done a lot to me, like, just on a really real level, doing both of these projects and doing them so closely together. Especially because both of my characters, at the core of them, there's just all of this love. And so then you see what these circumstances, what these injustices, what all of these issues that we've been dealing with for so long, what that does to love, and particularly love in the Black community, and how that's under attack.
When the two of you have these breakthrough performances for Barry Jenkins in these intimate, great films, how does that, what was that? Yeah. How does that change, clarify what you want to do with your film career? Because I'm sure that you guys had ambitions in this arena even when you were working in theater, before you got to Hollywood. But when you have something that great almost right out of the gate, what does it do?
Well, first of all, it puts you around just really dope artists and people that are really committed to the craft, which I've really appreciated because, not everybody in Hollywood is committed to the craft. They're committed to a lot of other things. So to, just right out the gate, be around so many people who really care so much about the work and doing right by these stories and doing right by, these, like I'm always saying, like, we're playing fictional characters, but they represent real people, so being around a bunch of people who are committed to, really doing right by the stories of these real people. I just think starting off, like, in the industry with that is such a blessing in that sense. But then in terms of career, I mean, I don't know, for me, I feel like doing Beale Street and then doing Native Son lets people know, like, I'm not afraid to use my art to really say something and to speak up about things that really matter to me, and that this is where I can find, where I can speak up about these things and put my voice and, really everything that I have into saying something about, these things, which I think is important, to let people know, like, we're not afraid of these stories, and these stories are important to us.
Yeah.
Well, Ashton, from afar, I mean, it looked like that Moonlight experience was like being shot out of a cannon. I mean, who could have necessarily? I mean, I'm sure you knew that it was a great film that you were making, but the trajectory of that film until the very end was crazy.
Yeah, that was crazy. I'm gonna let y'all know, like, we all signed on to that film for like $7,000. Like, it was a passion project. Like, we knew that the script was good and we wanted to create something beautiful. And it feels good. It feels good to know that you're creating projects that mean so much to you and that could possibly mean so much to people, and for people to respond in such like a powerful way, like positive way. I mean, that just warms my heart. It gives me chills, like it makes us know that we're doing something right. But yeah, Moonlight was insane, and yeah.
Were you there at the Telluride premiere of Moonlight?
I was not.
When was the first time you saw it with an audience?
I saw it at Toronto Film Festival, and that was insane. Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those experiences just like this, like I'm blessed to be able to be doing these powerful, like, films, and playing these multi-layered, like, real characters, that people don't really take time to see, or like think about, yeah, that's been a blessing. And so, yeah, I guess to go back to your last question, doing that film with Barry Jenkins has kind of like made these experiences almost like limitless, almost, which is also a blessing. So.
But it's an interesting thing with films like this because sometimes you spend more time on the award season trail than you spent even making it.
Right.
Man.
KiKi, what's this experience been like for you?
It's been great. Like, it's definitely, I'm thankful that my first experience with like the award season and campaigning and like all of that stuff has been, with such a beautifully artistic film and surrounded by such genuine artists. Because it's easy to get wrapped up in Hollywood BS when on these campaign tours, because you start getting swept up in things that it's like, but it's about the film. Yeah, it's about all of this work and all of this effort that we've put into creating this beautiful piece of art. But doing all the campaigning and all of that stuff can start to kind of push you into a direction that might start to take you away from that. And so thankfully I was surrounded by people who, very much so knew what it was actually about and could remind me of that, because it's definitely easy to get lost. But I mean, it's been a great experience. I mean, it does get tiring. I've definitely had my moments of being like, pretty exhausted, but like, I love Beale Street, I love Native Son, so I'm gonna be looking forward to when it comes time to really, push that, because at the end of the day, we want people to see these films.
Ashton, what was it like for you? I mean, how long did you spend promoting Moonlight? Something like 6 months, practically, right?
Yeah, it was a pretty long press. I mean, it was a casual like press tour. I mean, you do your Oscar like it's like a casual like Oscar press tour. You know, like you start at like a certain month and you end like at a certain month. You have to because all the awards are happening like after like December. You know, but yeah, I mean, obviously, like I said, crazy. It was my first time, and just like KiKi, like being able to be around Mahershala Ali and like just like gain all this wisdom from him, like being in this for so long, and you know, that entire cast was kind of like a family. You know, like we definitely were a family, just like this one was. So it was
The same family.
a lot of the same family, and so yeah, it was cool to be doing that with them, and obviously like life-changing moments, you know, like trying to take it all in as much as I can, but still like so surreal because everything's happening so fast, so fast, so fast, you know, like it's one thing and then it's the next. But again, like you love it, it's your job, and it's kind of like you can't believe this is all happening, especially like when it happens, like just like KiKi, it's like happening so fast for her, like it's kind of like, okay.
What was your experience of that Oscar night? Because when I go back and look at it, I remember Trevante Rhodes being like, you know, like everyone's shocked expressions. That must have been insane.
Insane. Yeah. Yeah, it was just that. It was insane. I mean, I think it's every actor's dream to be standing on the Oscar stage. And just also thinking about where we came from at the beginning of this project, you know, like people called it kind of like the little film that could, you know, and it was definitely that. You know, it was definitely that. And so, yeah, I mean, it kind of like humbles you almost. Like, wow, like we really did that.
I mean, it was crazy watching it. Like, I was at one of my homies' crib, and like we're just watching it all unfold, and like just the emotions, even just watching it. One, because being personally connected, like seeing you on this stage, and then even like Terrell Alvin McCraney, like done some of his plays back in Chicago.
Terrell actually went to DePaul University as well.
Yeah.
Chicago, baby.
He works really closely with the theater company that I'm a part of there. So we were like also just super excited to see that. But then also that feeling of what it meant seeing all of these Black artists on that stage taking home Best Picture for this movie that really was just like, I mean, just what Moonlight represents like for artists, and I think young Black artists coming up, and what that means to see that film take home Best Picture, even with the way that it happened. I'm just like, whoo, old Hollywood was trying to hold on. Like, they was trying to hold on. Just wasn't quite ready. But it represented a shift, man.
Ooh, I'm so happy she said that.
It
Yeah.
did. Like that was a moment. I'm like, what does that mean to be in a time now where that film, were there even any white people in Moonlight? I literally think there's like literally no white characters in Moonlight.
We had like two like white background people and like and in one scene, like in like the third section with Trevante, like they were like walking in the back of the facility that Naomi Harris was like in. It's right.
I mean, it's powerful. Like as a young Black artist, like that meant something. Like like something opened there. And then even, you know, now being in a time where movies like Native Son or Beale Street or Black Klansman or Black Panther or Get Out, like all of these films are starting to happen. Like I tell people I'm so thankful to be coming up in Hollywood at this time. And that's one of the things that I mentioned, at a time when a movie like Moonlight can win Best Picture. And, you know, we're seeing all of these different stories being developed and produced that are like breaking the boxes and the barriers and the limits that, you know, especially being, you know, having wanted to do this for so long, you start seeing it's like, oh, well, this tends to be the way that someone who looks like me can be, you know, portrayed in a film. And we're starting to see that all of the, like, a lot of those limits, we're starting to push against them, and there's still so much more work to be done.
And we'll continue to do films that push that boundary.
Right.
Yeah.
So then how do you navigate the Hollywood bullshit? Because once you come into the system, you know, you could very easily, they could call you in, you sit at a conference room, they're like, KiKi, Ashton, we're gonna make you into a brand, here's your team, and then suddenly you're not where you started.
You gotta know yourself, man.
Yeah.
Like, at the end of the day, this is your career. Like, these agents work for you. It's not the other way around. You need to be particular about the type of work you want to do, and your team needs to be aware of that. And if they're not, then, you know, keep it pushing, you know, but you need to be working with people who want to build the same type of career as you. And I'm blessed to have a really dope team that's been with me for a minute and can respect that, you know. But I think that's important, like, especially doing the type of work that we do. It's kind of like a rebellious act in a sense, you know, almost. So you gotta, like, keep shit, like, knit tight, you know? Yeah.
That's interesting. You've got to know yourself. And I wonder, before I open up to questions from the audience, playing these characters, going to the extremes that they go to, what does that teach you about yourself? What have you learned from the characters that you've played in Moonlight, Beale Street, Native Son that taught you something about you?
I've been learning a lot more about love and, like, the power of it, and, you know, how it can fill you up, you know, to lean into the people around you that you love and that love you so much, and finding the strength in that. But then it's made me more aware of, like, how it really is under attack. And it's really affected just how I feel about love and how I allow that to affect me.
And do you get a sense of, I mean, the way that people must be reacting when they come up to you after seeing the movie or on the street? Because these are films, these are characters that we need to see more of and don't often. You know, telling stories that are so intimate, that are so real, and yet aren't seen all the time in Hollywood.
I mean, it's been amazing. With Beale Street, it's been really special just feeling, you know, people coming up and witnessing what they've been responding to the most. I think there's so many things that you could take away from that film and take away from Native Son too. So it's really interesting to see, like, what is connecting with each individual audience member. But then, like what you were saying of, like, needing to see more of these characters, that's definitely come up a lot with Beale Street. Like, people just coming up like, I've never seen, like, a dark-skinned girl with natural hair being, like, romantically, like, she is so loved and so nurtured and so cared for. What does that mean, seeing two chocolate black people loving each other like that? So, like, things like that where it does come up of, like, wow, these images have been lacking. So then it gives you, like, encourages you even more to keep, you know, telling stories where we can keep putting those images forward because they're real. It's not like it's not happening. Chocolate black people out here loving, like, every day. So, you know, like, putting it out there on the big screen.
All right, well, let me open it up to you guys. What would you like to know? Here's Ashton, here's KiKi, right here. Do we have a mic runner situation? Great. Hold on one sec.
Thank you. First, thank you so much for how you're transforming culture, which is incredibly exciting. I wanted to ask, you've worked with some incredible directors. What is that process and collaboration like when you're coming on board for a project?
Okay. You know, it's just, I think we've gotten lucky to be able to work with directors, like I said before, who, like, allow us to have a collaborative experience. But I mean, even it's kind of like respect on, like, both sides, right? It's like respecting each other's artistry. And so it's kind of, although the projects are different, it's kind of like the same type of feeling. And I know for a lot of actors, it may not be that type of experience, but we've been lucky, or I've
Yeah,
been
they say we're
lucky.
spoiled.
Basically, yeah, we've been kind of spoiled to work with these directors who trust us, and like they're great at what they do, and you know, just allow us to be and like develop together. And whether it's like Moonlight, Native Son, or working with Antoine Fuqua and Equalizer 2, or whatever it is, like which are like, you know, like it's like, yeah, you know, like two totally different worlds of film. You know, like it's all good. You know, like it's all good. Yeah.
But is it always easy to keep in touch with that intimacy when you're making something that's bigger? No pun intended.
Oh, that's funny. That's really funny. You know, I find there's like, I don't know, like major motion pictures are so unnecessarily stressful. You know, it's like everybody's running around like with their head cut off. It's like, yo, chill out. Like, you know, like, so I mean, like being around that energy can mess with you, because it's like, damn, well, I gotta perform in front of y'all, like in front of all y'all 40 people, like in this intense ass scene, and you wanna run around with this like anxious energy, like calm down, bro. You know, like, but yeah, I mean, so doing these independent films, like everybody for the most part is as passionate as you, and you can definitely feel that energy on set, you know, and like it makes you comfortable, everybody else is comfortable, and boom, bam, you know, like you get what you get. And I tend to find that I have like better experiences, you know, doing the independence. Like that's really where my heart is at. That's where like the art is being cultivated. Like that's where you really connect to the people. And so, yeah.
More questions right here?
Hi. I know that a lot of creative people tend to be introverts. I don't know if I can comment for either one of you, but how does it feel to strike a balance between capturing or preserving your privacy and private moments with what's been an overnight explosion of all this publicity and people in your face?
Yeah, it's weird because I mean, at least for me, I mean, Equalizer 2 is huge, but at least for me, I've like it's smaller films, so it's like I feel like it's a different way that people approach me. It's like, oh my God, KiKi Layne is just like, yo, like I love Beale Street, like your performance, like, you know, it's a little bit more chill, which I think is great for me because I'm a little awkward.
We're introverts, man.
It's like you put the roles allow you to grow a little bit more outside of yourself. But thankfully, I don't know, like it's like a lot is happening really fast, but I feel like it's still pretty gradual, like in terms of people knowing me. Like I'm still in the place, like yesterday somebody gave me a picture of a different black girl with braids to sign, and I was just like,
oh my God.
Not me. So yeah, that real life happened. I was just like I was looking at, I was like, I don't recall taking this photo, and I didn't get a good. I was like, I wish I knew like who it was. I didn't look at it like well enough. I was just like, so I'm still in that place. So
yo, you need to get it together. Do not be doing that.
I mean that, yeah. So still there. But I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to just remember the things like. I don't know, figure out those things in my life that like no matter where I go, like these are the things that like I am connected to, and these are the things that ground me. And I mean, thankfully my family, they're not gonna let me get too big-headed anyway. But yeah, I think that's what I'm trying to pay more attention to is like what's gonna keep me grounded as things continue to take off. And give myself space to figure that out, because it's like it's just a process.
Is that maybe part of the fun of being able to wear these amazing outfits from these amazing designers? Because I find sometimes that with fashion, if you're wearing something that says a lot, you can actually say a little bit less.
The fashion stuff, I mean, it's just like one big ass game of dress up for me. It's like so fun. But now it's like dress up went from like, you know, TJ Maxx and Marshalls to, I don't know, Dior and Gucci. Shit's crazy. But I mean, that's been so dope though. Just like feeling the support of those brands at such an early place in my career. And then, you know, also understanding, because I've had, you know, some women come up to me of like, what does it mean to see like this dark-skinned girl like wearing like all of these different kind of, you know, fashion styles and everything, and just things that maybe we haven't seen or just have been told that like, oh, someone who looks like me isn't pretty enough to be in that Dior dress. Like, I mean, this is real, like that's real. And so it's also like me making a statement, you know, with that as well. Because I think, you know, the industry hasn't always supported that.
More questions? Back there?
So you all have both mentioned you've gotten chances to work with great directors. Do you have any aspirations to one day direct yourselves? And if so, what would your approach be? Thank you.
Absolutely. I couldn't say what my approach would be. I mean, I think I'm like learning, like I'm continuously learning about like the craft and like about, you know, like how the camera works, or like learning from these directors, or like, you know, these cinematographers. So I think once I'm in a place collectively where I feel like I can do that, my process will come about, but I honestly couldn't like tell you that right now.
Yeah, I definitely want to direct and produce, just be on the other side of the table. Like acting, you're just waiting for someone to say like, you're good enough to be in this. And it's not always the best place to live. So yeah, and just, you know, being in a position to like give people opportunities and, you know, help to, you know, break even more boundaries, tell even more stories that haven't been told. But I know for me, I'm probably going to start directing on stage first, just because that's where I have most of my experience and knowledge. And then, yeah, one day film, but I'll probably start directing on stage first.
Yeah.
More questions? Back there?
All right, quick question for you, also from Chicago. How do you balance, I mean, you're both are talented actors who happen to be African American as part of your identity. How do you balance wanting to be in films that support black work, but also not being typecast as, oh, those are black actors who only do black stuff?
You gotta fight.
Yeah.
Gotta fight.
And like really put it out into the universe that is what you want. Like even like initial meetings with my team, like ASAP, like yeah. So this Beale Street's dope, Native Son, whoop whoop, but not about to get stuck into any type of box. Like Will Smith is like the actor that I look up to the most, because to me he represents someone who didn't allow Hollywood to put him in a box. And what's dope about his career is that we don't ever really question what he does. Like if he does a sci-fi flick and then he goes and does like a quiet, you know, really intimate movie, or he doesn't go, you know, does a big blockbuster action, something, like nobody's questioning it. Like there's some actors that like you'll question, like, why are you doing a comedy? like, and so it's important, like, you know, a couple people popped in y'all heads. But no, like I that's what's important to me, is just to make sure, like, you know, you really putting it out there and then doing the work to get you there. Like, you know, so I don't know if somebody tried to give me another like beautiful adaptation of a black work, I might have to say like, I might not be able to do that one right now, just because that really happens to us. You get put into a box.
Yeah, you
so
get
quick.
typecast. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, wow. Yeah, that's a really good question. There's something in the industry, they say like one for you, like one for them, you feel me, or whatever. So I feel like we have to continue to do the projects that we want to do, but also we have to do the blockbusters. Like we just have to. That's just a part of the game. Like if we were doing these types of films, it was just nothing wrong with, you know, they're powerful or whatever. Our careers would just be like more stagnant than like, I don't, like, you know what
I mean, it's the vision for your whole career.
Right.
Like even like, so you can see what's coming, you know, across your desk right now. That's like it's right there, but you also have to have your mind's eye on, but how do I see my whole career looking, and what steps do I need to take to get there? Which may mean it's not that, you know, certain projects that are coming around aren't great, wouldn't be really wonderful projects to be a part of, but is it going to serve that larger career vision that I have? And then even though we're young, you know, being confident enough in the ability to see that vision come to fruition, to possibly say no to some things that, like, even though it's great, just to be able to say like, but it's not like I always, like there's the quote that, oh, God's always working for our good. Well, I say he's always working for our highest good. And so I try to think of what's serving my highest good, because even though it's something that looks good right now and like would be a great thing to do, it might not be serving the highest good of my career, and leaning into that, even when it's scary, because it's definitely can be scary, but we got to be committed to it.
Right here.
Hi, thanks for the great conversation so far. So from the 3 films we've talked about, they're quite deep films, and you guys talked about how important it is for people to see representation on screen. And I'm just kind of curious, how do you guys see yourselves approaching a younger audience so others will be inspired to pursue careers like yours?
I mean, I feel like a big part of it is just remaining true to ourselves, and like I was saying, remaining true to that vision. Because I mean, it does get scary, especially when some of the things that like you are aspiring for, you haven't seen done yet, or seen done yet by people that look like you. And so yesterday at one of our panels, they asked like, oh, like what's some of the advice we like to give to younger artists? And I always say like, just trust the journey that you're on. It's easy to really get swept up in comparison in our industry. It's super dangerous, like it's so dangerous. But like trusting the journey that you're on, and that it's what's serving, again, your highest good. And that's something, I mean, we're still very much so young artists, still navigating that ourselves. But yeah, I'm like, at least that's something that, you know, I try to lean into, because I'm like, we're still coming up as well, you know?
Right here.
Question I had for you was around, you were involved with 2 different men in 2 different films that you've done, and the love and how deep the love was, but in both cases, sort of, you know, one you're separated, and you know one's going to die, the other one you're separated, but you know it's coming back, waiting for him to come back while you have this child with you. How different was that feeling, or when you walked off the final set, or just going through the process of having this deep love, but then knowing that you're being separated from the person?
Separated our characters, or separated from my co-stars? Sorry.
Really about the characters, as well as just the bond you build with your co-stars while you're there, and then you sort of go away.
Yeah, I mean, you go on a journey, you know, with these people, especially for Beale Street. I mean, that one, we worked, 26 days? I worked 25 out of the 26. And so Steph and I really were on a journey together. This one, I wasn't on set as much, but thankfully coming in, Ashton and I already had, you know, a personal friendship that we could lean into, because it goes dark. Yeah, it goes really dark. So thankfully it's, you know, you're building that, you know, relationship with these artists, because so much of it, we have to be able to trust each other, to be that open and to be that vulnerable, and to, you know, run and hold them, or to cry on them, or, you know, even to walk away. But thankfully you're on this journey with that person. So then even in those moments where it's hard to shake it off, because like some days, you know, you're asking about that, like it is harder to shake some days off than others. But thankfully you have these other artists that are in it with you, that you can lean on, you know, to go through that with as well. But I mean, thankfully, I don't know, I got blessed with 2 really just open and caring artists to work with. Yeah. You all right?
I think we have time for one more. Right there.
Yeah, she better have a friend support.
Hey, I'm Carrie Bernard's KiKi and Ashton. You guys are amazing, so amazing. Watching you guys on screen brings me to tears. And especially you guys said today, like, coming from me, African-American, single-parent mom, I've never really seen this like ideal of Black love on screen before. And watching Moonlight and watching watching If Beale Street Could Talk and then watching Native Son on the premiere, like, oh my God, it touched my heart so much. And I kind of wonder, because the love was so real and it kind of reinvented, not that I'd never had an idea of Black love, but of course I did, but I'd never seen it until I started watching these movies. How close is that to your real life? Or if you don't mind answering, if you don't totally understand, but did you guys see that growing up? Or is this something that you had to go through the journey of creating as you were doing these movies? And amazing job again to the director too, Rashid. Thank you guys.
You know, I can say, wow, I can say that I learn a lot from these characters. Like they teach me a lot. Like KiKi was saying, it's kind of like a journey, right? So you kind of like grow like through them. So you kind of like experiencing like love in a different way that you're not necessarily walking away with love, or you haven't been walking this particular way with this mindset of what love is, for example, like for 19 years, and then you spend 2 weeks shooting Moonlight and you're a completely like transformed person. You know, it's as much of as an awakening for us as it is for you. And like that question like is fucking beautiful. And we appreciate you. Yeah. I don't know if you want to say anything.
I mean, like that's, you know, earlier I had said like the thing that's really been affected for me by these films is what love means to me, and what does it look like, and how I, you know, can extend love or receive love differently. But I mean, again, like these images, they are new to being on a screen, like, you know, being on the big screen and being supported like that. You know, like to have these bigger studios and bigger producers and all of that, you know, but behind them to have awards talk and to be a part of those conversations. So it's definitely, I mean, we feel that as well. And that was something like I had to see Beale Street to really like, even do like you're doing it and you know you're doing something special, but then you see it. And that, I mean, we're right there with you.
Did you feel that when you saw Moonlight?
Oh, yeah. Moonlight, I mean, I just remember sitting there, it's me and Tiffany. We saw it together, another friend of ours. We're just, I mean, all of these films are just, you just kind of sit there because it's, I mean, you haven't seen it before. And I feel like your whole being is trying to process this very new thing that you just have not seen.
It's kind of scary, right, to be able to like feel that vulnerable, you know? So you can't even imagine how like scary, well, I wouldn't call it scary because we're willingly like opening ourselves up to play these characters, but yeah, it definitely is a particular moment and feeling when you watch something like Moonlight and like Beale Street. Like I went to go see Beale Street 3 times, and each time was like a, okay. And yeah, each time was like a breath of still fresh air, you know, like all, like in every part of your body. I feel like, I don't know, like that's just the type of filmography that changes like mindset and like heart and like life, you know? And that's a part of what we want to do. We want to continue to do films that people can like respond to in that way. And honestly, I'm about to cry from even like feeling your emotional response to our work, you know, like that makes us feel like we're doing like something, right? So thank you for that. Cool.
Well, on that note, let's hear it for our guests, Ashton Sanders and KiKi Layne.